Visit twitch.tv/KeeganToga to catch me live Wednesday through Friday. Hello everyone, and welcome to a little tutorial on the Rotate MD-80. I'm just going to show you how to get the plane started up and get up in the air. I was actually looking around on YouTube the other day and was trying to find the tutorial on how to get the plane going, just so I could double check the things that I do, see if they're right, see if they're wrong, you know, that whole thing. And I saw a couple. One of them was actually by Rotate themselves. But the Rotate one doesn't have anybody talking and doesn't have anybody, you know, showing you through the process. And then a couple of the other ones were stream highlight videos that were like an hour and a half, 2 hour, 3 hours long. And I know nobody wants to sit through that entire thing. So I'm going to try to give a little small tutorial on how to get this plane up in the air for anybody who's having trouble with it. This is just the way I do it. And I'm kind of roughly following the way I did it with the FlyTheMaddog MD-80 and an FSX. So it could be different from the real world procedures, and of course this is a flight sim, so I mean it's not going to be, you know, perfect. Anyway, we're going to be starting directly from a cold and dark state. If I pop in here, everything's turned off, nothing's on. Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through the things I do to get this plane going and running, and I'll take you through takeoff, and then after takeoff I'll probably cut this video off, and then if anybody wants, I can do a full flight tutorial or something like that on here, so I can just show you the whole, you know, how I fly the plane basically. So the first thing I do is I come up here and pop the battery on, and then I switch this over to bat volts so we can see here the volts that are coming out of the battery there. And this is the part that I used to have a lot of trouble with, because on the FlyTheMaddog MD-80 you go up here to connect the ground power, but in the Rotate you actually go up here into aircraft management and turn on the GPU. And then from that I whack on the GPU. So after we get the GPU on, we can just kind of do like a small flow. The way that the panel is set up, it's very hard to do a flow, but this is kind of the flow that I found that works for me. Is after turning on our GPU, I go over to the galley power, and then emergency lights, our passenger signs. I put on the pitot heat onto capped right there, and then I turn on the windshield anti-ice. That's kind of the setup there. And then I jump back over here, can put the packs on auto, and then align the IRSs up here onto nav. Now in this plane, there's no way to speed up the IRS alignment process, so as soon as I turn those on, I usually jump down here to the FMC, and I go over here and get the IRS position from here and pop it in there so that it will start aligning. And I think it takes 5 minutes. I'm not 100% sure on the time of that, but I am pretty sure it's 5 minutes. So once those get going, I hop down here and flick on the yaw damper. And then we can do some tests here if we want to, like the stall test. I just realized you can't really hear anything. I'm going to cut the video just a second. I'm going to turn up some sounds and I'll be right back. Alright, you should be able to hear things a little bit better now. We'll do that stall warning again. Alright. Then we can do our max speed test. And we got pretty much those are the two tests that I do when I get the plane going. So something different with the Rotate MD-80 and with the MD-80 in general is on most planes the lights are up here in the overhead. Down here is where you'll actually find the lights in the MD-80. So I'll go over here and put the position light on, and then if it's nighttime I'll pop up here and put the logo light on. Everything's kind of all over the place in this plane. So it's really a matter of, like, you know, trying to figure out where things are at. So we can turn on our screen brightnesses here, and that should be pretty much good to go for that. Now, while we're waiting for the IRS to align, I'm gonna just go ahead and jump into what I would do after. After I put in the FMC stuff, which I'm not gonna do. If you've flown a Boeing, you know how to do this FMC. It's pretty much the same. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to throw in like 5,000 up here. I don't know what runway we're going to take. and I don't know. Guess we can actually do takeoff performance stuff. We'll have to do that if we're gonna take off. I'm just gonna put that in there for now. We can turn the flight directors on, and then this is important for when you do the toga switch for takeoff. You need to press this EPR lim button. So that way, when you flick on the autopilot, it'll guide to the EPR limit. Which, if I actually press the TO button here, it'll guide to that right there for the takeoff power. Alright, so while we're waiting for the IRSs to align, we can jump down here. I loaded up at Long Beach, so I'm just going to put in Long Beach to Long Beach. I'm not going to worry about a flight number or runway. Well, actually runway. I can look over here on the charts for Long Beach. Give me just 1 second. And we can see that based off of where we're at, I'll pull this over here so you can see. Based off of where we're at down here at the south ramp, I think we're gonna go take off runway 30. I don't care about any winds or anything for this. This is just a demonstration. So I'll pop in runway 30 here. And there's not gonna be really a route. So we'll activate that. We can't execute it yet because the IRSs are not aligned. We can go ahead and do the perf init page. We don't have a lot of fuel at all, but like I said, we're just going to be taking off, and that'll be it. So I'm not going to worry about fuel. 0.4 kilos in there. That's all set. We'll do 0.1 as the reserve, I guess. Cost index, we can do like 80. Cruise altitude, 5,000. And I usually don't do any of this, but you can get it off your flight plan if you want to put it in there. Now, if the IRSs were aligned again, we'd press execute there, but we can't. So not aligned. We can just pop in the outer air temperature here and pop in our V speeds here. Now with that V speed up in the I forget what it's called in the MD-80, but it's the MCP in Boeing's. We can put in that V speed, that V2 speed, directly into the MCP. So it's 135. We'll pop that in there. You don't have to do a V speed or a V2 plus 15 or anything like that. You can just pop in that V2 speed directly in. Now, one of the quirks with the MD-80, and you saw here that our IRS is just aligned. One of the quirks with the MD-80 is you can manually select our center of gravity, our flap setting, and what flaps we're going to use. Now, in the rotate, I've never used the takeoff flap select. I've always just put it on 23, just so I have a intermediate flap setting between 15 and 28. But over here, you can set that if you want to. But over here is where I put the center of gravity, which is 38. So come over here, we tune this all the way back to 38. 35 is as close as we can get. So I'm just going to put that there. And then you do whatever flap setting you're going to use. I'm going to use flaps 11. You can use either flaps 11 or flaps 15. It doesn't make a huge difference in this plane. Your takeoff speeds are going to be the same either way. And then we can set our trim to where the green one right here and the black notch right here line up, and they look like they're about right. And yeah, that's pretty much our before start flow, really. So now we'll go up here and get the APU on. I usually turn on all the fuel pumps because the way I do this, I usually don't start the APU until I'm ready to start the engines. So whenever I start the APU, I'll always turn on all the fuel pumps that are going to be in use. We don't have any fuel in the center tank, so we're not going to worry about those. We'll hold this down on start for a couple seconds, get the APU running, and then we just wait for that to come on. And then while we're waiting for that, we can go down here and do auto brake on takeoff. We can arm that. Pneumatic cross feed valves need to come on. These are very important. Your engines will not start without those. Over here, also very important, we need to turn on our hydraulics. And then we'll come up here and press TO on the takeoff limiter. And that should be about it for engine start. We just gotta wait for the APU to come on, and I'll see you back here when that APU gets activated. Alright, so our APU is active now. We're in the green at 100% there. And our APU is available, so we can switch that onto the bus. Now, if you really want to, you can disconnect the ground power, but it'll disconnect automatically when you push back or pull out of the stand. But I'll just go ahead and disconnect it here for tutorial sake. After you get the APU on, very important, you need to turn on the APU air, and that'll get air flowing through the packs and everything. And even more importantly, it'll get air to the engines, which is why we open the pneumatic crossfeed valves. So getting ready for engine start, you can choose your engine ignition switches here, system A, B, or both. I'm going to choose A. Turn off the packs so we have enough air going to the engines as we can get. And pretty much from that, we'll turn on the anti-collision light. Whoops, that's not the anti-collision light. It's that one there. And pretty much on the outside, we should be set for an engine start. So starting the engines on this plane are pretty simple. You go up here, open the guard to the engine you want to start, and we'll start the right engine first. You just flick the switch down. You can come down here and watch. It takes a while for the engines to start in this plane. And the number that you would usually go to in an MD-80 is 21, because you want the N1 to be above 20. Sorry, N1. That's N2. N2 to be above 20 when you put in the fuel. But with this plane, that always works for me is I just wait until we get to 18 and flick them on. It's just, you know, I'm lazy. I don't feel like waiting all the way up to 20. So that's at 18 there. I'll flick the fuel on. Come here and hear the engine starting up. Pretty much the way you'll know that these engines are stabilized is if you watch up here, the right engine will flick onto the bus and this light will go out in a second. So we'll just wait for that. There you go. The engine is giving power now. You can kind of wait for the numbers to stabilize. Looks like the EPR is stabilized, N1 is stabilized, and that looks all good. Come up here, turn the switch off, close the guard, and then you do the same thing for the left engine. Wait for it to get to about 18. See, the MD-80 I flew before this was the FlyTheMaddog at FSX, and it seemed like instantly these numbers would go up, so I always get really impatient waiting for this plane to start. Because to me it feels like it should be going a whole lot faster than it is. Any day now. I guess we were waiting for 18, not 20. Whoops. Flick the fuel on. Now we don't have a whole lot of fuel here to play with, and if I was smart, I would add more fuel. But we're just gonna roll with it and see what happens. So we got that engine coming on. We can go up here, wait for the bus to flick over, like so. That looks good. We can come here and put the flaps down now. So your first notch is going to be slats, and then after that you got flaps 11, 15, 20, so on and so forth. So I'm going to use flaps 11 for this takeoff. You can come down here, switch the pneumatic crossfeed valves off, turn the ignition, start switch, and the guard off. If you're using engine anti-ice, you leave the ignition on whichever one you chose, but I'm not, so turn that off. APU air can come off, APU can come off, and then you turn your packs back on, and you're pretty much ready for taxi. Can come over here, right here, turn on your taxi light, and you should be set. So I'm gonna taxi the plane real fast. Don't have a very long taxi, and we're really light, so we could probably do an intersection departure if we want to. I'm gonna kind of taxi it like a madman. We'll do a southwest taxi. What is this? We got a runway right here. I just realized that my
Approaching.
scenery
3, 4, right.
is not lined up with this airport, so we're gonna cross this runway. Yeah, that's weird. The real airport does not have a 3-4 right. Alright, I added in a little more fuel just to be safe, but we're taxiing down Delta right now at Long Beach. The reason I chose Long Beach is this is where this plane was produced. McDonnell Douglas had a factory here where they made the MD-80s. So, just seems right to fly the MD-80 out of here. We're going to take this intersection departure here. I'll slow it down a little bit. So, here you can flick on the strobe lights. You can flick these on pretty much immediately because in the MD-80 the strobe lights will not activate unless the plane's off the ground, which is kind of nice. Turn the transponder to TARA and flick the nose lights to bright.
Approaching 3, 0.
Approaching 3-0. We'll assume we have clearance for takeoff. We'll get lined up. Something you have to do in this airplane to get like a toga button or anything is actually press the toga buttons at the end of the throttles here. It's these little switches on the back.
On runway 3, 0.
It's an awesome turn on to centerline there. Runway 30 is verified. What you do in this plane is you push the throttles up to an EPR of 1.4. It's a little more than halfway up. Whoops, went a little too far. We'll just say EPR 1.4 set, and then toga. We'll pull the throttles back and then push them up. Also turn on the landing lights, which I always forget. So on the roll, you want to keep forward pressure until 80 knots, which we just passed. Keep the nose on the ground. You can pull it up. Crossing V1. Rotate. It comes right off the ground. Positive rate, gear up. And the MD-80 will have a pretty awesome climb rate. So about 400 feet. If you had a flight plan put in here, you'd click nav. So now your flight director would follow the flight plan. And then I usually wait until about 1,500 feet here, and I'll flick the cruise limiter on the thrust limiter, and I'll go over here and click VNAV. And with that, I'm not really sure why this popped up. It must have been because I reset the fuel. But here you would have your bugs down here if you don't reset fuel in the middle of taxi. After the last white bug, you can put your slats up, and then after the bug before it, I should have said that in the opposite order, but your next to last bug, you can put flaps up, and your last bug, you can put the slats up. And pretty much after that, you're on your way. And that's pretty much how I get this plane up in the air. I mean, it's not really hard once you get it down a couple times. You go online, search up, find yourself a checklist. It's really really makes it a whole lot easier when you have a checklist to look off of. But other than that, we can turn off the nose lights because obviously the nose gear is up. We can go down here, turn the auto brakes on off, and that'll disarm them. And after that, you go to departure, do your thing, and we're going to blow right through our altitude. I'm going to set this like way up so it shuts up. But yeah, other than that, there's a small little tutorial on how to get the Rotate MD-80 up in the air. Hope you enjoyed, and feel free to share this video around if you know anybody else who's having trouble with this plane. Again, this is really just my way of setting up the plane. I'm sure it's not the right way at all. But yeah, other than that, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.